All right, welcome to this video on food rehydration. So we have food that needs to be rehydrated. I'm just going to kind of do a little demonstration and explain how this works when you're in the bush, because it's not something we tend to do a lot at home. So first of all, if you recall, I dehydrated some mamacetti. This is my wife's delicious pasta meal that she'll make. It includes an egg noodle, cheese, ground beef, tomatoes, tomato sauces, all kinds of stuff. And it's kind of a really delicious meal. It's one of my kids' favorites, okay? And what I'm going to do is, normally we would have a large bag of this, a really large bag of this, and we would put it into a pot, a big pot, but I have a small amount, so I'm just going to pour that into this small pot here. And it's really not even that much. It's probably not even enough to feed one person here, but getting close to feeding one person. So I'm going to tip the camera down so you can kind of see what I've done here, but I'll hold this up. This is our Trail Classic stove, and it's hooked up to an isobutane cylinder so I can get some heat, but I'm not going to start with heat. What I'm going to start with is just some hot water. So I'm going to tip the camera down, okay? A little bit like that. That should be good. What I'm going to do is pour hot water in it. I'm cheating, folks. I'm using the kettle from the kitchen. No, I don't have my little bug stove set up, boiling water, which is what we would do in the bush, and I would just use my ladle to ladle water in. Instead, I'm going to use water out of the kettle. And I'm going to explain to you here how much to add. And basically what I'm trying to do is add enough water that I get to the top of the material that's in the pot. So I don't want to go beyond it, but maybe about the top of it. So I'm not sure how well you can see that, but it's basically making it into a slurry. You can definitely see water's in there, and I can shake it around. And really what I want to do is occasionally stir this while there's some hot water here. So I'm just kind of stirring it around. You can still see the water is clearly there. And what's going to happen is slowly but surely that water is going to get absorbed into this food, and it's going to absorb it and kind of rebuild it back to its original state. Now, my wife actually had some in this particular one. She didn't just put egg noodles. She put some macaroni noodles in too, so you can even see some of those in there. I'm just going to keep the lid on because the more heat that I can keep in this, the better, okay? In the meantime, I'm going to explain some other things about dehydrating and rehydrating foods, okay? So while that's doing its charm down here, and it probably takes a good 10 or 15 minutes to do this properly, maybe even a half an hour when you're in the bush. It's not something that's just done instantaneously. It takes some time. And the people who are on cooking duty that night, it's not hard, but it takes some patience. And generally speaking, when people have said they didn't enjoy the meal because they didn't wait for it to really properly rehydrate, okay? Now, a lot of times you can buy dehydrated meals. This is a good example of a pre-purchased dehydrated meal. Okay, it's a Mountain House rice pilaf with vegetables. This is actually a vegetarian. I have over on the other side. It looks exactly the same as this chicken and rice, which is probably our favorite one that we usually do. And it's a pretty good size meal, and it's actually supposed to be enough for 2 people. Now you tear this open. I'm not going to tear it open because once I open it, I gotta cook it, and they're not cheap, so I'm not going to just waste it for no reason. But I tear it open, and inside you'll find a little oxygen absorbing packet, and that's purposefully in there to absorb any excess oxygen, which will help break this down. And just in case you're wondering, I think you can find the expiry date on some of these, and some of them the expiry date is like 2065, like 50 years. It's ridiculous how long they say they'll keep. So you can keep these things a long, long time. Some people keep them in their house as like an emergency food in the event that, a pandemic occurs and we can't get to the grocery store or something really bad happens, okay? Once I have that, then I scoop or pour in water into the bag, and it has like a zip lock material in here, I stir it for a few minutes, and then I Ziploc and seal it and let it sit for about 10 minutes. And during that 10-minute time, the food reabsorbs the moisture in the water that you've poured in. You open it up and you can eat it straight out of the bag. I love that about these because it means like I don't even need a plate. I don't need anything special. I can eat one of these. They do kill some pretty serious calories. I think if you have the whole bag, it's like 1,200 calories. That's a lot of calories in one meal. You throw in a bun or a piece of bread, you can easily get yourself to 1,500 calories for a meal. And so I quite like these. This one's a little lower in calories. It's only about 500 or 600 calories for one bag, but that's because there's no meat or meat products in it, so you tend not to get as much. They say they serve two. I know better. When we go on our trips, I always bring one per person. I know people are hungry. And we always have these kind of meals on our very last day in the bush, just because it's simple and easy and it kind of makes for a fun trip. You could theoretically do a trip where every day you eat meals like these. You can even get things like scrambled eggs and all kinds of different types of meals that you would have. So you could have your breakfast and your supper each time that way. They're not cheap. Like a meal like this can be like $13 then. And so you're kind of spending a little bit more money than when you're cooking at home. Okay, I can make a pot of mama seti up that'll feed a group of 8 people for probably $25. So, you know, that's considerably cheaper. You're getting into $3-4 per person as opposed to buying these at $13 a person. Okay, now I have my food dehydrating here. I'll bring the camera. I'll move the camera back down so you can see what I'm doing. Okay. And here I am. Take the lid off, and you can start to see it. And wow, look at that! Almost all the water has reabsorbed already. So it's amazing how that's looking there. Okay, I'm actually going to add a touch more water, and this is typically what I'll do in the bush. I would not say this is quite done yet. You can start to see some beans and various other things that are in this food. Okay, you can do stews, you can do all kinds of different things. So I just added a touch more water, and I'm going to stir. You'll notice that so far I haven't added any heat to this pot. I've just let the hot boiling water do its work. Okay, and it will work. You can start to see distinguishable bits and pieces in the food that exist, and it's quite good. In fact, I'm pretty sure at this point I could even try a taste of it and see how it comes out taste-wise. The smaller you make the pieces of food, the better they dehydrate and the better they rehydrate. So just touch more. And sometimes if you find that, you know, this happens, touch more water here, sorry. Sometimes in the woods, when you're in the bush, you find what happens is the pot or the food is just not dehydrating as well as you would like, and it starts to get cold. And so you have your little Trail Classic stove here, and I'm just going to fire it up. You can see me twist the knob here. Gas is coming out. I'm in my garage, so I'm in a safe place to do this. I have my pot holder here, okay? So I can hold this pot while I'm stirring. I want to make sure that it's not going to spill. Imagine if you have a big, huge pot here for a whole bunch of people. The last thing you want to do is see that spill on the ground. So you want to make sure you keep it nice and stable all the time while you're stirring it. If you stop stirring, you want to make sure it's in the middle. Let it go. That's fine. You can let it go for a bit. And you'll see here, I can even get this to bubble a little bit. Be careful. It will very quickly start burning to the bottom. So constant stirring when you have heat on it is almost 100% necessary. And this will help if you do happen to add too much water, which I recommend just go slowly adding the water, then you can boil some of that water off. You can see the steam coming and water is starting to boil off here. I'd say right now we're only 5 minutes or so in. The last thing to rehydrate well is the meat. And so you have to be patient with it. And this is starting to look a lot more like a stew than maybe a pasta, but that's common. It's actually still very delicious, okay? So this is rehydrating your meal. Something that weighed, maybe something that weighs a pound will finish off at weighing 3 pounds, and that means you didn't have to carry those 2 pounds of water with you the whole way because you just used water from the resources available to you. Yes, I usually use filtered water when I do this, but it doesn't have to be. If the water's been boiled sufficiently, it's just as clean. Okay. Look at that. It's starting to look pretty yummy. I'm getting hungry here. See that? And I'm just going to give it a little taste. And once again, still a little bit crunchy on the meat. I would say it probably still needs another 5 or 10 minutes of kind of adding a bit more water, reheating, keeping it nice and warm before it's really ready. Okay, so you can do this with just about any meal, a stew. Probably one of the favorite ones for people to do is chili. Shut my stove off. I like the mama seti. I've seen kids try it with spaghetti, with pork meals, and we've had some tremendous success even in the classroom with kids trying different things and then rehydrating, and then we taste them. The mama seti still seems to be one of the favorites. It's got lots of different things in it that make it really hearty. So this is your lesson on rehydrating, not dehydrating, but rehydrating dehydrated foods. And I hope you enjoyed that.